Alrighty, and here we are, live for Chapter 8 of The Unknown Prince. Story is slowly progressing, so here we go. No need to delay. The tense pause lasted only a moment before Walter explained, "I'd wanted to avoid flashing my insignia this way and that, but since you are already aware, my business has nothing to do with the society. This is a private matter, one I would like handled swiftly and efficiently, if you understand my meaning, Sire Lask. Like yourself, I have no time to waste." Both Plosion and Udro exchanged a look before Lask finally issued a slow but visible nod towards the vampire noble. "I understand. There's little I can offer, however, as after my brusque message was delivered, they seemed eager to depart. I have no idea if they did so immediately or visit any of the other academies nearby. There's also the issue of the slave ring in town." "Slave ring?" Walter furrowed his brows forward in concern. "The expansion of Gryffindor and its agreed place as a neutral territory has allowed for some rather unsavory folk to set up shop in the surrounding township. I can't ban something that's technically not illegal, not in neutral territory where, unfortunately, a number of loopholes were left in place to allow these very things. I'd been doing my best to eradicate the brothels and betting arenas popping up alongside us. I finally had to give in and allow a few individuals to open up shop here with a list of heavy regulations." Lask then sighed in the hopeless way a leader did when they knew things they said would not be listened to. "I stand on the honor of their words and little else. If your daughter was taken, Lord, and they had any nefarious intent at all, I'd start by checking the few establishments in town that cater to that variety." There was a moment in time where Walter appeared to have to force himself to take a very long, contemplative breath before he could speak with any level of civility. "And you think these places are the most likely?" He could ask Elias. Plosion spoke up, which caused the entire company to turn his way. Udro looked curious, Walter looked eager to hear more, and Lask almost seemed to glare at the half-fae, who cleared his throat nervously and corrected himself. "I mean, Mr. Van Bauer. If anyone is bought or sold around here, he'd know. He's got his ear to all the local business." When Walter turned back to face the Kappa, Lask issued a slow breath and nodded. "He's quite right. Elias Van Bauer is the gentleman who I made the first contract with. In his own way, he helps police the conduct in town. I don't necessarily like the man, but he's cooperative." "And where can I find this Elias Van Bauer?" Walter asked with clear intent. "Most likely, the Golden Halo," Plosen chimed in again, and again another glare. This one no one seemed to notice. The fox-eared half-fae went on. "It's easily the biggest establishment in a business square in town. You likely saw it on your way in. He owns it." "I think I did," Walter mused as he Walter mused to himself as he turned back to Lask. The Kappa merely sighed and sat back down. "It sounds like you have somewhere to start. Will that be all?" "For now, yes. Thank you, Sire Lask. I am forever in your debt for the information." The nobleman bowed and then moved to excuse himself, Plosion moving aside so he could do so. Lask merely frowned with his normally flat stare and gave a curt nod. "Indeed, I wish you luck." It was nearing 2 o'clock in the afternoon by the time Walter made his way out of the Citadel and back to the town proper. He wasn't sure whether to be terrified, annoyed, or downright livid, but for the time being, he held his emotions together and did his best to keep his mind on gathering information. If Remy had somehow wound up in a slave brothel... He closed his eyes and was forced to pause and take a breath. He couldn't dwell on that just yet. "Sire, are you all right?" a young-sounding voice seemed to ask from nearby. When Walter reopened his flowing, blood-colored eyes, he was forced to pause and observe the individual who'd approached him. Or pair of individuals, rather. One appeared to be a green-hued satyr of some sort, with visible plant life in his fur, and the other was pale-skinned with feathered ears and a veil. They both stood about Walter's height, but were clearly youngsters, teen-aged, most likely, 13 or 14, perhaps. The most distinctive thing about them were their acolyte robes, a clear marker for the young students of the society. Walter gave the pair of acolytes a smile and issued a subtle nod. "I am. My apologies. I was just doing my best to gather my thoughts." "Okay, we just wanted to be sure," the fawn of a fellow chuckled back pleasantly. "Sometimes folk from the taverns need a little assistance." "I look like the type that haunts a tavern," Walter chuckled with good nature. Both youngsters seemed to laugh softly, though the pale individual didn't seem to make any actual sound. The green-hued satyr was the one to respond. "Not really, but we do get some out-of-towners who lose their way sometimes." "Now that's fair," the vampire chuckled back to the youths as he observed them more closely. "Given the fact you're both locals, what can you tell me about this establishment here?" Both young summoners turned to gaze towards gazed towards the grand sign over the entrance to the Golden Halo. Masterfully built, the wood structure almost resembled an upscale inn with guards at the door and many wealthy-looking clients coming and going. There were 3 stories and balconies where guests chatted, drank, or smoked. The satyr lad chuckled again. What's there to say about a cat house? Cat house? The nobleman mused in a way which didn't seem to amuse him. Yeah, it's a brothel. Like, they try and keep it from us, but come on, we hang out in town, we see what goes on, we're not stupid. The satyr lad shrugged and seemed quite nonchalant about the entire topic. That didn't seem to comfort Walter in the least. That's a pity. Normally such things should be kept separate from where the youth socialize. The kid shrugged again, so the vampire frowned and asked, Is there any chance you lads saw a pair of gentlemen with purple cloaks enter this establishment? No, we don't actually hang out here often enough to know who comes and goes. Not unless they're super flashy, the satyr responded. What constitutes as flashy? The vampire inquired, his curiosity piqued. The young summoner and his friend seemed to exchange a look, and then the satyr shrugged. Well, showing up in a portal of fire, or landing in the square with a dragon, that kind of flashy, he chuckled. Walter chuckled mirthlessly back, but nodded slowly. Fair enough. I suppose I should be comforted knowing nothing like that has happened recently. He sighed and turned to observe the busy brothel, then turned back to the pair of youths to offer them a smile. I thank you for your assistance. Are you able to accept gratuity? Call it a donation and we can accept anything, the satyr chuckled back. The vampire noble smiled with more genuine amusement and fished a quarter of large silver coins from his pocket. He offered them 2 apiece. If I see you 2 later on, I might have more questions. For now, I must conduct my investigation somewhere rather unsavory. He then offered the pair a bow and turned to head towards the halo. The 2 beamed with gratefulness, the satyr calling out as Walter departed, No problem, good luck. As Walter stepped towards the doors of the Golden Halo, the guards gave him a looking over but didn't stop him. The vampire figured he must meet the dress code. As he made his way inside, what he saw he found rather shocking. He had expected a rather sordid scene. He'd been within brothels before. Though normally to close them down, rarely, like in this case, he was seeking information. The room resembled a neat and posh lobby, with a number of sofas, chairs, and refreshments offered to the guests. All manner of folk milled about, from rough-and-tumble mercenary types to more nobleman-looking fellows much like Walter. Elves, humans, centaurs, shapeshifters, greenskins. It seemed all sorts of individuals frequented the establishment, and from the looks of it, nothing abnormal was taking place. Folks were simply socializing, enjoying the refreshments, and hovering about a bar that resembled a front desk at first glance. Once Walter realized it was indeed a fully stocked bar, he approached it, eyes focusing upon a blonde bartender in a long-sleeved tunic and stylish vest. He was able to reach the bar and take a place next to it, but just as he was about to speak towards the tender, a black-haired gentleman slid onto the stool next to him and breathed the heaviest of exasperated sighs, turning his attention. Dressed in a professional suit and handsome tailcoat, Walter gave the man a looking over as he spoke towards the blonde. Sava, for God's sake, get me something to drink. These morons are driving me batty. The man half hissed with annoyance, cradling his forehead in a hand for a moment as he breathed another soul-crushing sigh. Right away, Mr. Van Bauer, the blonde chirped back cheerfully as he poured a whiskey tumbler full of an oily black liquid. That caught Walter's attention, and he turned to face the black-haired gentleman fully. Excuse me, sire, but that wouldn't be Elias Van Bauer, would it? The human-looking aristocrat sighed and turned around to face Walter, and immediately his demeanor changed. Handsome and with eyes a pale shade of rose, Van Bauer seemed to take a proper moment to blink, size the vampire fully up, and then adopt the kind of playful smile those with interest offered. He immediately relaxed his posture and tone as he moved to sweep a few shoulder-length locks of hair away from his face. He then offered it to be shaken. It would, and who do I have the splendid pleasure of being acquainted with this afternoon? Walter's smile became immediately tempered into calm amusement. He could already tell the sort of man this Van Bauer was. My name is Walter Hatt, and I'm wondering if you could possibly assist me with an urgent matter. I certainly hope so, the proprietor grinned as he reached for his delivered glass of oily liquor. He kept his dazzling eyes keenly upon Walter the entire time. Should we speak elsewhere, sire? If the matter is urgent, I assume it's sensitive. It is, Walter nodded with a placid expression, and so long as I'm not imposing. No trouble at all, the cheerful businessman shook his head and dismissed the matter as he waved Walter to follow him. He led the vampire to a nearby door, which opened to a hallway with several more. He selected the door at the very end of the short hall and then led them into a spacious and well-furnished office. fully equipped with its own minibar and several places to sit. Walter lifted his brows at the lavish furnishings, the fine bureaus against the walls and their massive mirrors, the expertly crafted glass mosaic lamps and the plush seating which all looked freshly upholstered. Walter was convinced he was rather correct in his assessment of Van Bauer. "So," the man stated once he'd closed the door and locked it, and slowly moved to take a seat in a nearby armchair. He set his glass upon an obsidian table that sat in front of it, another armchair upon its other side. Van Bauer gestured Walter take that seat. "What is this urgent matter I can assist you with?" Walter now had to decide just how he was going to go about questioning Van Bauer. All right. And here are your 5 options today. Option number 1. "I'm not at all certain you can, and absolutely won't hold against you if you can't," but Walter sighed and feigned a certain level of despondence as he took the offered seat. He set his parasol aside to hang it off the chair's arm. He then focused upon Van Bauer. "I'm afraid my daughter has gone missing, and I have reason to believe she may have been sold into slavery by a pair of Ventrali associates." Here's option 2. Adopting a playfully demure smile, Walter slides into the offered seat and sets his hands upon the cane handle of his parasol. "Master Van Bauer, I hate to waste the time of a handsome gentleman, so let me be rather frank with you. My daughter is missing, and I have reason to believe she may have been sold into your staff. I don't fault you if that's the case. I understand the complexities of your business. I'm truly and simply interested in purchasing her and rectifying this unpleasant but rather unintended situation." All right, and here's option 3. In an instant, Walter's face became stern as a thundercloud as he made his motives clear by remaining standing. "Sire Van Bauer, I don't have time for niceties. My daughter is missing, and I have a firm belief she may have been sold to you by a pair of Ventrali associates. She's a young, slender darkling, looks to be about 4 or 5, but with a mind like a razor. Dark hair, pale skin, exceedingly fair features." Here's option 4. Walter sighed and for a moment sounded quite exhausted as he slipped into the role of a tired investigator. "I dearly hope you can. This case is becoming a rather complicated mess. I was on the trail of a missing darkling, young-aged, traveling with what may have been 2 Ventrali gentlemen. If you can tell me you've seen them, I would be forever in your debt." Here's option 5. "I'll stand, thank you," Walter replied with what quickly became the posh tone of a noble dealing with something quite possibly below his station. He then took a breath before he explained. "I've no time to dawdle, so I'll cut quickly to the point, Master Van Bauer. I'm a busy man with a number of business ventures, and as such can be the victim of political attacks. My daughter recently went missing, and apparently arrived in town just yesterday with a pair of Ventrali associates. I need any and all information regarding their whereabouts." All right, those are your 5 choices this time. Chapters are getting a little longer because, we've set up a good baseline for how the story is going. And how Walter responds to Elias is really going to affect how Elias is willing to help him, or not help him. So we'll see. Make a decision, we will find out.